Hey guys, it's Buddha Gem, and we are finally going to dive into some intellectual self-defense against More Powerful Than Dynamite, Radicals, Plutocrats, Progressives, and New York's Year of Anarchy by Ty Jones. I'll give you a little bit of context, and we'll dive into a passage. Today we're going to be talking about what I like to call a deceptive truth. It's something you're to find again and again and again in literature, movies, TV shows. And so I'm going to give you a real-world example of one right here, and we'll talk about it. Okay, a deceptive truth. What the heck is that? It almost sounds like an oxymoron. A deceptive truth is something that is factually true, but presented in such a way as to mislead the reader in this case. So, without further ado, a little bit of context. The year is 1914. It's the culmination of one of the bloodiest labor battles in U.S. history that is now known as the Ludlow Massacre. Women and children set on fire and burnt to death by John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s thugs. Many, many more union organizers and striking workers murdered. Machine gun fire rained down upon them. Again, one of the bloodiest battles in U.S. labor history. And it's caused such an uproar. There are protests across the country, editorials, you name it. It is a big, big deal. It's such a big deal that Congress has convened a special little committee, and they've had John D. Rockefeller come down to testify about what's going on. Him and his dad own about 40%, I believe, of this company, or 40% of the stocks in this company. They're one of the biggest stockholders in this company. So that's where we're at contextually. We start with actual testimony from the Congressional Committee, and I quote, "The chairman, you may give your name and residence to the stenographer, Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller Jr., 10 West 54th Street, New York. Now Ty Jones." And that was just about the last collegial exchange of the day. From then on, Jr. was peppered with hostile questions, mockery, and hectoring. The congressman repeatedly interrupted and challenged him on every last little detail of fact. He had wondered what he, who had so little direct contact with the strike situation, could add to the investigation. Now it was clear that the interrogators had no interest in his expertise. They intended to showcase his ignorance. It's that last line that I really like to focus on. They intended to showcase his ignorance. Now, just in that little passage I read, you get a feeling that John D. Rockefeller Jr. is the victim here. He doesn't really know what's going on. Doesn't think he can really help. And they don't really want to ask him any questions. They just want to showcase his ignorance. So, and that is true. They intended to showcase his ignorance. That's the truth. That's the deceptive truth. But you see the way he built it up, Ty Jones built it up, creating this illusion, or perpetuating the myth, rather, of the adversarial government. Government is the adversary to big business. It's a myth you'll hear again and again and again. And it's showcased quite well by Ty Jones here. Poor John D. Rockefeller, he goes down there to lend whatever help he can lend, just a good guy trying to do his civic duty. And here Congress just wants to showcase his ignorance. It's misleading because government is not being the adversary here by any stretch of the imagination. Shit has hit the fan in a big way. There's outright rebellion in southern Colorado. Socialists are being elected to, Congress and, city councils. Anarchists are, raising huge crowds, at their speaking events. The 1% is literally scared. And what does government do? What is the primary purpose of the government, according to the framer of the Constitution, James Madison? To protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. And that's exactly what Congress is doing. They are protecting the system that gives rise to John D. Rockefeller Jr., Cornelius Vanderbilt, Bill Gates, etc. And the way it's doing that is, yes, showcasing his ignorance, showing him as what they call the dummy director, saying, look, this guy doesn't know anything. It was employees that worked for John D. Rockefeller Jr. that made some bad decisions. The op-ed in the New York Times was titled, "Somebody Blundered." Give you an idea. It was a critique on tactics, that someone made a bad decision there. That's kind of what's going on. So, yes, they intended to showcase his ignorance in order to protect the system and ultimately to protect not only John D. Rockefeller Jr., but the rest of his 1% cohorts. And it worked quite well. The papers loved it. It kind of got people to say, well, John D. Rockefeller, you can't really hold him responsible. And it's that growing tide of corporate capitalism that we're familiar with today that was still pretty new in the early 20th century, was this idea that they own it, but they're not responsible. And this really is that kind of one of those defining moments where John D. Rockefeller just goes out there, he's suave, he's patient, he answers the questions the best he can, and he makes a favorable impression on many people across the country. And so the tactic that Congress used worked quite well. So again, Ty Jones misleads us because Congress isn't being adversarial at all. I mean, think about it. If you don't know much about this, John D. Rockefeller had his own thugs trying to keep down the strike. They were murdering organizers, killing strikers on their own, but they were starting to lose the battle. So they called the governor, who they referred to as their little cowboy governor. How quaint, right? The Rockefeller family could refer to a governor as their little cowboy governor. He sends in the state militia, who are also starting to lose a little bit. It's not quite as decisive. So the state governor then refers to Woodrow Wilson to bring in federal troops. So how adversarial are they being? There are no troops coming in on the side of the strikers. There are no guns and ammo coming in from the government to help these men, women, and children that were brutally set afire by Rockefeller's thugs. Again, government is not being adversarial, and yet that is the tone that is used, that is the image that is created by Ty Jones, is adversarial government just trying to paint Rockefeller as an ignoramus. Again, it's a misleading truth because that's exactly what they're doing, painting him as ignorant so that he wouldn't have to be responsible for what people who were following his orders did. All right, so I hope you were able to, follow along with that. If not, please, if you need some follow-up questions, throw them in the comment section. I'm gonna do more of these if you guys like them. I think it's kind of fun to kind of pick this apart. There's tons of this in here, and this really is the kind of left liberal intellectual that Chomsky often refers to. That they, on the one hand, it looks like they're fighting for the people, but in reality, they're just kind of perpetuating the power systems that exist already. So that's our little hands-on intellectual self-defense, and it's more to do in here, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. So stay tuned for more intellectual self-defense with Buddha Gem, and I will see you very soon.